The assembly hall smelled wrong. That was the first thing Allison Webb noticed when she walked through the doors. 300 species gathered in one space created an atmosphere thick with competing scents, nervous energy, and barely concealed hostility. She had attended 47 of these meetings over the past decade, and none of them had felt quite like this. The Vryn delegation sat in the elevated platform reserved for formal challenges. High Regent Sal Theron stood at the center, his crimson armor catching the artificial light in ways designed to intimidate. His species had swept through the outer territories like a storm, crushing resistance from 12 different civilizations in just 2 centuries. Now they wanted more. Allison took her seat among the other human representatives. Her colleague, David, leaned close and whispered, "They're actually going through with it." "Looks that way," she replied, keeping her voice neutral. Sal Theron began his speech without preamble. His translator converted his harsh, clicking language into standard galactic common. The Vryn Empire has identified 3 worlds currently held by the human collective. These worlds belong to us by right of superior force and ancient claim. We demand immediate surrender of all human settlements on Kepler, Ross, and New Manitoba. A ripple of shock passed through the assembly. Several smaller species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Allison noticed Ambassador Quillen, an elderly insectoid diplomat, physically recoil at the words. "The humans have 7 standard days to evacuate," Sal Theron continued. "After that period, we will take what is ours. Any resistance will be met with the full might of the Vryn military. We have destroyed greater civilizations than yours. You would be wise to accept reality." The silence that followed was profound. Allison stood slowly, drawing every eye in the chamber. She looked small compared to Sal Theron, who towered over most species present. Her simple gray suit lacked any military decoration or ceremonial armor. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly despite its softness. "High Regent, I want to make certain I understand correctly. You are formally challenging human territorial claims and threatening military action if we do not comply with your demands." Sal Theron's mandibles clicked in what his species considered a smile. "I am not threatening human. I am informing you of what will happen. Your kind looks weak. You speak softly. You carry no weapons even in formal challenge. You fear your own star, covering your pale skin whenever possible." He gestured at her dismissively. "The Vryn have fought true warriors. You are not warriors." Ambassador Quillen rose from his seat, his translator carrying an urgency Allison had never heard from the normally calm diplomat. "High Regent, I must respectfully advise reconsideration. The humans have been members of the galactic community for 300 cycles. In that time, they have never shown strength," Sal Theron interrupted. "Never demonstrated power. They hide behind words and treaties. The time for words has ended." Other species began speaking over each other. The Confederation representative stood and declared his people would remain neutral. The Hive Collective announced they would evacuate all nearby space. A small delegation from the Outer Rim actually began packing their materials to leave immediately. Through it all, Allison remained standing, waiting. When the chaos finally quieted, she spoke again. "High Regent Sal Theron, I need to ask you one more time. Are you absolutely certain this is the action you wish to take?" Something in her tone made several nearby diplomats go very still. Quillen's antennae drooped in what humans had learned was a sign of deep distress. Sal Theron laughed. The sound translated into something between a bark and a growl. "Is this human fear I hear? Are you begging now? We expected more dignity at least." "I'm not begging," Allison said quietly. "I'm confirming. You are issuing a formal military challenge to humanity over disputed territory. You intend to use force to remove our people from worlds we have legally settled. You are doing this with full knowledge and intent." "Yes," Sal Theron declared, spreading his forearms wide. "Let all assembled witness. The Vryn Empire challenges the human collective. We will take your worlds. We will scatter your weak species back to your overcrowded homeworld, and we will do so in 7 days whether you resist or not." Allison nodded once. "Then we accept your challenge. Under galactic law, we have the standard 7-day preparation period, which you will use to flee, no doubt," Sal Theron said. "No," Allison replied. "We'll use it to prepare." She gathered her materials and began walking toward the exit. David and the other human representatives followed in silence. As they passed the Confederation delegation, one of the ambassadors hissed, "You should evacuate. The Vryn have never lost a war." Allison paused, looking back at the Confederation representative. "Neither have we. Behind them, Quillen was frantically trying to reach the Vryn council members who had remained on their homeworld. His voice carried across the emptying chamber. You must contact your military. You must share the historical files. The humans are not what you think. Please, you must listen. But Saltheron was already celebrating with his officers, confident in their superiority, certain of their coming victory. They had crushed 12 civilizations. What was one more? In the corridor outside, David finally spoke. Should we contact General Hayes? Allison pulled out her communication device. He already knows. The entire assembly session was broadcast. I imagine he's already making preparations. The Vryn have 300 warships in their fleet, David said. They've been building up for this. I know. Their ground forces number in the millions. I know. Allison, David said, his voice dropping lower. Are we really going to do this? She stopped walking and turned to face him fully. They challenged us, David, in front of the entire assembly. They threatened our colonies. They insulted our people, and most importantly, they wouldn't back down when given the chance. She paused, her expression grave. We don't get to walk away from this. Not anymore. How bad is it going to be? Allison considered the question carefully. For us, minimal. For them? She shook her head slowly. They have no idea what they just started. Far above the assembly station in the dark between stars, human ships began receiving their orders. Crews who had been on routine patrol suddenly changed course. Military bases that had seemed half asleep for decades came alive with activity. And on Earth, in the headquarters buried beneath the mountains, General Torrin Hayes looked at the challenge declaration on his screen and allowed himself a grim smile. It had been 60 years since humanity had been forced to show their true capabilities. 60 years of peace, of careful diplomacy, of letting other species believe humans were just another civilization trying to get along. 60 years of restraint. The Vryn Empire was about to learn why every other major power in the galaxy had treaties of friendship with humanity, why wars ended when humans chose sides, why the most dangerous phrase in galactic politics was, "The humans are getting involved." They were about to learn why predators recognize other predators, and why the smart ones never challenge them without cause. Allison reached her ship, entered the coordinates for Earth, and sent one final message to the assembly records. It was simple, just 5 words that would be studied by xenohistorians for centuries to come. You were warned. Remember that. The 7-day countdown had begun. News traveled fast in space, but panic traveled faster. Within 3 hours of the assembly challenge, 17 species had issued emergency evacuation orders for any territory within 10 light-years of the disputed colonies. The Galactic Trade Network saw its first complete shutdown in 400 years as merchants refused to approach anything connected to the conflict. Quillen sat in his private quarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing the chaos spreading across civilized space. His communication console had not stopped flashing for the past hour. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Were the humans really going to fight? A priority call came through from the Confederation High Council. Quillen accepted, and 5 faces appeared before him, representing the most powerful non-human alliance in the galaxy. Ambassador, the lead counselor said, we need clarification on the human response. Our intelligence suggests they are mobilizing military assets. They are, Quillen confirmed. This is madness. The Vryn will annihilate them. We've reviewed the strength comparisons. The humans don't stand a chance. Quillen felt his antennae twitch with an emotion humans would call bitter amusement. With respect, counselors, your intelligence is incomplete. Explain. The elderly ambassador pulled up files that were marked with the highest classification levels. What I am about to share is not widely known, and for good reason. The humans have worked very hard to keep this information quiet. But given the circumstances, you need to understand what the Vryn have actually challenged. He brought up an image of Earth, the human homeworld. This is a Class 12 death world. There are only 4 such classifications in the known galaxy. Most sentient species evolved on Class 6 or Class 7 worlds, where conditions are difficult but manageable. We know Earth is harsh, one counselor interrupted. That doesn't translate to military power. Please let me finish, Quillen said firmly. A Class 12 world means that nearly everything on the planet evolved specifically to kill and consume other life. The gravity is 30% higher than galactic standard. The atmosphere contains oxygen at levels that would be toxic to most species. The temperature swings would be fatal to unprotected Vryn soldiers. And this is the environment where humans evolved over millions of years. He pulled up biological data. Look at their physiology. Humans have forward-facing eyes, a characteristic of pursuit predators. Their visual range includes spectrums most species cannot see. They can track movement with precision that rivals our best targeting computers. Another display showed human skeletal structure. Their bone density is absurd by galactic standards. A human child has stronger bones than most adult Vryn. Their muscle fiber composition allows for both explosive power and endurance that should be biologically impossible. This still doesn't explain. "I'm not finished," Quillen said, his voice taking on an edge that silenced the council. "Humans heal from injuries that would kill most of us. They have a redundant circulatory system. Their pain tolerance is so high that military medics report soldiers continuing to fight with wounds that should have induced shock and death." He switched to historical records. 300 years ago, when humans first achieved faster-than-light travel, they encountered the Kelvin Dominion. The Dominion decided humans would make good slaves and attacked a colony world called New Berlin. "Do you know what happened?" The counselors remained silent. 1,000 human colonists held off a Kelvin invasion force of 20,000 for 3 months. Not 3 days. Not 3 weeks. 3 months. They used improvised weapons, turned their farming equipment into artillery, and fought from positions that should have been overrun in hours. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found 700 humans still fighting. The Kelvin retreated. Quillen brought up another file. Then there was the Treaty of Broken Swords 40 years ago. 5 species, including our own Confederation, attempted to restrict human expansion into contested space. The humans refused. We mobilized our combined fleets. Do you remember what happened? One of the counselors spoke quietly. "The humans won, but we were told it was a negotiated settlement." "It was negotiated after the humans destroyed half our combined fleet in the opening battle," Quillen said flatly. "They used tactics we had never seen. They accepted casualty rates we considered suicidal, and they never stopped advancing. We sued for peace because continuing meant complete defeat." The council chamber was dead silent. Quillen continued, pulling up more records. "Let me tell you what the Vryn don't know. Humans can eat substances that are literally poisonous to most species. They consume them recreationally and call it spicy food. They domesticate predators from other worlds and keep them as companions in their homes. Their young engage in play fighting that would be considered military training for most species." He showed footage from human entertainment broadcasts. "They have sports where they deliberately injure each other for fun. They have competitions to see who can endure the most pain. They climb mountains and dive to ocean depths that would crush most beings, not for survival, but for entertainment." "But surely their military can't be that different from—" "Their military is worse," Quillen interrupted. "Or better, depending on your perspective. Humans have something they call adrenaline. It's a chemical their bodies produce during stress that increases their strength, reduces their perception of pain, and sharpens their reaction time. They literally become more dangerous when threatened." He pulled up classified military assessments. "Our intelligence services have been studying human combat doctrine for centuries. They wage war unlike any other species. They don't just fight for territory or resources. They fight for ideas, for concepts. They have a word, spite, which means fighting harder purely because someone told them they couldn't win." Another display showed human military equipment. Their weapons are deliberately designed to cause maximum psychological damage. They have protocols for fighting in vacuum, in toxic atmospheres, underwater, underground, and in conditions that would kill most soldiers before they ever saw combat. And they train for all of this constantly. One of the counselors finally found their voice. "Why haven't they conquered the galaxy?" Quillen looked at each of them in turn. "Because they choose not to. That's the part the Vryn don't understand. Humans could have dominated galactic politics centuries ago. They have the technology, the military capability, and the strategic mindset, but they prefer cooperation to conquest. They would rather trade than raid. They choose peace. Then why is everyone evacuating?" Another counselor asked. "Because the Vryn just forced them to stop choosing peace," Quillen said quietly. "The humans have been holding back, carefully managing their reputation, trying to be good members of the galactic community. But Saltheron challenged them publicly. He insulted them. He threatened their colonies. And most crucially, he did not accept their offer to back down." Quailan stood, his old frame somehow seeming heavier. Humans have a saying, "Don't mistake kindness for weakness." The Vryn made that mistake. Now everyone in the galaxy is going to be reminded why we have treaties with humanity, why we don't threaten their space, why the smartest thing you can do in galactic politics is make sure humans consider you a friend. What should we do? The lead counselor asked. Stay far away, Quailan advised, and hope the humans remember mercy when this is over. Because in 7 days, the Vryn Empire is going to learn a lesson that will be taught in military academies for the next 1,000 years. Across the galaxy, in the commercial port of Trader's Rest, a veteran spacer named Captain Rail sat with his younger crew members. They were drinking fermented gesh, a mild intoxicant popular among working-class pilots. The youngsters were excited about the upcoming conflict, placing bets on how quickly the Vryn would crush the human resistance. Rail said nothing until one of them asked him directly. Captain, you've been to human space. They're not that dangerous, right? The stories are exaggerated. The old captain set down his drink and looked at the eager young faces around him. Let me tell you what I saw once. It was 30 years ago during the Frontier Wars. A human colony ship was attacked by raiders. The ship was damaged, life support failing, and they were 3 days from the nearest help. He paused, making sure they were all listening. The humans sealed themselves into cargo containers with emergency oxygen. They dropped their body temperature to slow their breathing. And they waited. For 3 days they sat in the dark in near-freezing temperatures, barely breathing. When rescue arrived, 90% of them were still alive. They had calculated their survival down to the molecule. The younger crew members looked skeptical. That's not the scary part, Rail continued. When they recovered, those same humans tracked down the raiders. It took them 2 years. And when they found them, they didn't just defeat them. They made sure every pirate group in that sector knew what happened. The raid stopped for a decade. He finished his drink and stood to leave. The Vryn think humans are weak because they don't swagger around like warriors. But humans are persistence hunters. They don't need to be the strongest. They just need to outlast you. And they always outlast you. As he walked away, one of the younger crew members called after him. What do you think will happen? Rail looked back. I think the Vryn have 7 days left as a major power. After that, there'll be a cautionary tale. In his office on Earth, General Torrin Hayes reviewed the deployment orders one final time. 47 ships. That was all he was sending. Not because it was all he had, but because it was all he needed. The rest of the fleet would remain in reserve, watching, waiting. He opened a secure channel to Admiral Patricia Cole, who would command the operation. Her face appeared on his screen, calm and professional. General, she acknowledged. Admiral, status? We'll be in position in 5 days. That gives us 2 days to prepare the field. Rules of engagement? We follow the challenge protocol. If they withdraw, we let them go. If they press the attack, we end it. Hayes nodded. Patricia, the whole galaxy is watching this one. I know, sir. Show them why they don't challenge us, but show them why they also don't need to fear us. Understood. We'll make it quick and clean. The channel closed. Hayes sat back in his chair and looked at the photo on his desk. It showed a younger version of himself, standing with a mixed group of humans and aliens during a peace treaty signing. That was 60 years ago. 60 years of carefully built trust and cooperation. The Vryn had shattered that in one afternoon. Now it had to be rebuilt, but from a different foundation, not through hiding humanity's capabilities, but through demonstrating controlled use of those capabilities. Sometimes, Hayes reflected, you had to remind the neighborhood why they treated you with respect. 7 days, he thought. In 7 days, the galaxy would remember. The research lab on New Manitoba was experiencing what its director, Dr. Yoshi Tanaka, liked to call a normal Tuesday. 2 of the lab assistants were teaching a young tiger wolf pack hunting techniques. Another team was analyzing soil samples from the local wetlands, which contained microorganisms that would be considered lethal toxins on most civilized worlds. And in the main observation dome, a group of colonists were having lunch while watching a lightning storm that would require emergency shelter protocols on any other settled planet. Nobody seemed particularly concerned about the Vryn ultimatum. Yoshi was reviewing genetic data when his communication panel chimed. The face of Colonial Administrator Ben Park appeared, looking more annoyed than worried. Yoshi, I need you to put together a report on local wildlife, Ben said. Specifically, I need data on the tiger wolves, the razorback lizards, and those flying things with the acid spit. The sky hunters? Sure, but why? The Vryn are threatening to invade. I want them to understand what they're actually signing up for. Yoshi laughed. Ben, the wildlife is the least of their problems. I know that. You know that. But they don't know that. So humor me. An hour later, Yoshi was compiling a report that read like a horror story for most galactic species. The tiger wolves weighed 300 kilograms each, hunted in coordinated packs, and could track prey by scent across 50 kilometers. The colonists had domesticated them. Children played with them. The razorback lizards had armor plating that could deflect small arms fire and venom that caused complete nervous system paralysis. The colonists avoided them during mating season and otherwise considered them a minor nuisance. The sky hunters were arguably worse. They flew in swarms, spat acid that could eat through standard armor, and attacked anything that moved during their feeding times. The colonists had learned their schedule and planned around it. And those were just the local wildlife on one colony. The report didn't even cover the environmental challenges. New Manitoba had gravity 15% higher than galactic standard. The atmosphere was oxygen-rich to the point of being flammable under the right conditions. Temperature swings of 40 degrees were common between day and night. Storm systems generated lightning strikes that could melt steel. Humans considered it a pleasant agricultural world, good for raising families. Back on Earth, in the military training facility known as the Crucible, Lieutenant Nina Okafor was running her Special Forces team through what instructors called a stress test. In practical terms, this meant simulating combat in the worst possible conditions the human mind could devise. Today's scenario involved a zero-gravity environment with failed life support, hostile fire from 3 directions, and a rescue objective that required precise coordination under fire. The team had been at it for 6 hours straight. Most species would have called for medical intervention after the first hour. Nina's team was complaining they were getting bored. "Can we add more hostiles?" one of her soldiers asked over the comm. "This is too easy." The training supervisor, a grizzled veteran named Shaw, shook his head in disbelief. "You've been fighting in vacuum for 6 hours. Your suit temperature is at 45 degrees. Your oxygen is running low. And you want it harder?" "We're special forces, sir," Nina replied calmly. "This is what we do." Shaw ended the simulation and watched as the team emerged from the training chamber. They were sweating, breathing hard, and grinning like predators who had just finished a successful hunt. Not one of them had quit. Not one had fallen behind. He pulled Nina aside after the others left. "The deployment orders came through. You're going to the disputed colonies." "Finally," she said. "The team's been ready since day 1. Nina, I need you to understand something. This isn't like the frontier skirmishes. The whole galaxy is watching. We need to make a statement, but we also need to show restraint." She nodded. "We get in, we demonstrate capability, we secure the objective. No unnecessary casualties." "Exactly. The Vryn need to learn, not die. Most of them anyway." "Understood, sir." Shaw watched her go and allowed himself a moment of pride. Humans like Nina were why the species had survived everything their homeworld had thrown at them. They were adaptable, relentless, and capable of incredible violence when necessary. But more importantly, they knew when to apply that violence and when to hold back. That was the difference between a warrior species and a survivor species. Warriors conquered. Survivors endured. And humanity had been surviving in the harshest conditions imaginable for millions of years. Meanwhile, on the Vryn homeworld of Draxtar, War Master Krell was reviewing intelligence reports with growing unease. His aide, a young officer named Ensign Tal, had spent the past 2 days compiling everything available about human military capabilities. The official reports were concerning but manageable. Humans had a modest fleet, competent ground forces, and defensive technology that was adequate but not exceptional. Nothing that would trouble a Vryn assault. But Tal had gone deeper, accessing historical databases and cross-referencing older conflicts. What he found contradicted the official assessments. "War Master, I need to show you something," Tal said, his voice uncertain. Krell looked up from his tactical display. "What is it?" "I found combat footage from the Kelvin War, the one 300 years ago. The humans defeated the Kelvin. We knew this." "Yes, sir, but I don't think anyone actually watched how they did it." Tal brought up the footage. It showed a human defensive position under sustained bombardment. The position should have fallen in minutes. Instead, the humans held for 3 days. When ammunition ran low, they used rocks. When the rocks ran out, they used their hands. The footage showed a human soldier with a shattered arm continuing to fight. Another, with a wound that should have been immediately fatal, stayed in position for 2 more hours, providing cover fire for their companions. When the position was finally overrun, the humans fought hand-to-hand with an intensity that shocked even the Kelvin warriors. "This is one position," Tal said quietly. "There were hundreds like it during that war." Krell felt something he had not experienced in decades: doubt. "Show me more." Over the next hour, Tal presented a catalog of human military achievements that painted a very different picture from the official intelligence. Humans fighting in conditions that should have killed them. Humans taking casualty rates that would have broken any other species and then counterattacking. Humans turning defensive battles into offensive victories through sheer determination. "There's something else," Tal said. "I found references to something called wounded human syndrome." "Explain." "According to multiple sources, injured humans become more dangerous, not less. Something about their biochemistry. They have this response system that floods their body with combat stimulants when threatened. Pain becomes secondary. Rational thought gives way to something more primitive." Krell watched footage of a human medic who had been shot 3 times. Instead of seeking cover, the medic ran into open fire to retrieve a wounded soldier, carried them back to safety, treated their wounds, and then returned to combat. The medic survived and received a medal. "This is insane," Krell muttered. "There's more, sir. I found something called the Terran Spite Doctrine." "Spite?" "It's a human concept. It means fighting harder specifically because someone said you would lose. Their military has actually weaponized this. When human forces face overwhelming odds, their combat effectiveness increases. They have historical examples of battles where being outnumbered 10 to 1 improved their tactical performance." Krell stood and walked to the window overlooking his capital city. Dragstar was beautiful, a monument to Vryn military power and cultural achievement. They had built this empire through strength and discipline. They had never lost a war. "What is your assessment, Ensign?" Tal hesitated. "Sir, I think we should withdraw the challenge. That would show weakness." "With respect, War Master, continuing shows ignorance. Every major power in the galaxy has peace treaties with the humans. Not because the humans demanded them, but because everyone else wanted to ensure humans remained friendly. That should have told us something." Krell considered this. "Can we win?" "Unknown, sir. Our fleet is larger. Our soldiers are experienced. But the humans have advantages we don't fully understand. They fight differently. They think differently. And they have 3 centuries of experience hiding their true capabilities. Why would they hide their strength? From what I can tell, sir, because they prefer cooperation to conflict. But that doesn't mean they can't fight. It means they choose not to. We've forced them to make a different choice." A communication alert interrupted them. High Regent Saltheron's face appeared on the display, transmitted from the assembly station where he was still celebrating his challenge. "War Master Krell, I trust the fleet is ready?" "Nearly, Regent. But I have concern. Concerns are for the weak. The humans are evacuating their colonies as we predicted. They're running like prey animals. In 5 days we take what is ours." The transmission ended before Krell could respond. Tal looked at his commander. "Sir?" Krell returned to his tactical display and began reviewing the fleet deployment. "We follow orders, Ensign, but prepare emergency withdrawal protocols, and make sure our ships have the fastest possible retreat calculations ready." "You think we'll need them?" "I think," Krell said slowly, "that we're about to fight the galaxy's most successful predator species on their terms, in their territory, defending their young. Every instinct I have as a warrior says this is a mistake. But the Regent has issued the challenge and we must answer." He pulled up a human phrase that Tal had included in his report. "The humans have a saying, you can always surrender. You just can't ever quit." I'm starting to understand what that means. On New Manitoba, Ben Park was organizing the colonial response to the Vryn threat. This mostly involved making sure the civilians stayed calm, and the children didn't get too excited about the idea of alien visitors. "Dad, are we really going to fight the Vryn?" his teenage daughter asked over dinner. "The military will handle it, sweetie. But if they get past the military, what do we do?" Ben considered the question. His daughter was 15, had been raised on a Death World colony and spent her free time training with tiger wolves and rock climbing in storm conditions. Most galactic species would consider her a highly dangerous individual. We'll do what humans always do, he said. We'll survive. We'll adapt. And we'll protect each other. His daughter nodded, satisfied with this answer. Can I take the tiger wolves to the shelter if there's an alert? All 4 of them? They're family, Dad. Ben smiled. That was humanity in a nutshell. They formed pack bonds with predators, raised their children in harsh conditions, and considered loyalty more important than safety. The Vryn had no idea what they were actually challenging. Somewhere in deep space, Admiral Patricia Cole reviewed her final preparations. 47 ships. Enough to make a point. Not enough to look like overkill. Her crews were ready. Her captains understood their objectives, and her tactical plans accounted for every possible Vryn response. In 3 days, they would be in position. In 7 days, the demonstration would begin, and the galaxy would remember why humans were the species everyone wanted as allies and nobody wanted as enemies. The countdown continued. Day 5 of the countdown arrived with unexpected silence. The 300 ships of the Vryn fleet hung in formation at the edge of the disputed systems, waiting for final orders. War Master Krell stood in the command center of his flagship, the Pride of Drax, and felt the weight of 3 centuries of undefeated military history pressing down on his shoulders. His tactical officer approached with the latest scan results. War Master, we're detecting no human military presence in any of the 3 systems. No defense platforms, no patrol ships, no armed satellites. It's as if they've completely abandoned the colonies. Krell studied the scans himself. That can't be right. Run it again. The scans confirmed the initial results. The colonies were undefended. Civilian traffic continued normally. Transport ships moved between the worlds and the nearest trade stations. Everything appeared ordinary except for one glaring absence. There were no human warships anywhere in the sector. Maybe they did evacuate their military, the tactical officer suggested. Maybe the reports of their strength were exaggerated. Maybe, Krell said, not believing it for a moment. Ensign Tal entered the command center carrying a datapad. His face showed the exhaustion of someone who had not slept in days. War Master, I found something else. Historical analysis of human combat doctrine. What now? Krell asked, his patience wearing thin. Sir, humans have a tactical approach they call rope-a-dope. It's named after an ancient combat sport. The concept is to appear weak, allow your opponent to commit to an attack and then counter when they're overextended. Krell looked back at the tactical display showing the undefended colonies. You think this is a trap? I think we should be very careful, sir. Before Krell could respond, a priority transmission came through from High Regent Saltheron. The Regent's image appeared, large and imposing as always. War Master, why have you not yet begun the assault? The 7 days are nearly over. Regent, the tactical situation is unusual. I recommend a cautious approach. Cautious? Saltheron's voice rose. The humans have fled. Their colonies are defenseless. This is the moment of our triumph, and you speak of caution? Sir, with respect, something doesn't feel right. Where are their ships? Where are their defense platforms? This level of abandonment is inconsistent with... It is consistent with cowardice, Saltheron interrupted. We have 300 warships. They have nothing. You will begin the assault immediately, or I will find a war master who has the spine to claim our rightful territory. The transmission ended. Krell stood motionless for a long moment, then turned to his command staff. Prepare for assault. All ships to advance in formation. But I want maximum sensor coverage and all weapon systems at full readiness. Something is wrong, and I want to know what it is before we're committed. Far from the Vryn fleet, hidden in the shadow of a gas giant's moon, Admiral Patricia Cole watched the alien forces begin their advance. Her 47 ships maintained strict communication silence, their hulls painted with adaptive camouflage that made them nearly invisible against the cosmic background. Admiral, the Vryn are moving, her tactical officer reported. Formation suggests they're planning a standard occupation approach. No aggressive maneuvering. Cole nodded. They still don't see us. Good. Maintain silence. Let them get comfortable. Her second-in-command, Commander Rachel Liu, moved closer. How long do we wait? Until they commit. Until they're so far into the systems that withdrawal becomes complicated. We're not here to destroy them, Rachel. We're here to teach them. Understood. The crew is ready whenever you give the word. Cole pulled up a secondary display showing the colonies themselves. Civilian life continued normally. Children went to school. Farmers tended their crops. The colonists knew what was coming and had complete confidence in their military's ability to handle it. That level of trust was something Cole took seriously. Meanwhile, aboard the Pride of Drax, Ensign Tal was running one more analysis. He pulled up every recording available of human military communications during past conflicts. What he found made his blood run cold. Human military chatter during combat was disturbingly casual. Soldiers under heavy fire discussed lunch plans. Pilots executing complex maneuvers joked with each other. Commanders facing overwhelming odds spoke in calm, measured tones as if discussing weather patterns. But there was something else. In every recording at a certain point, the casual chatter stopped. The jokes ended, and the humans went quiet. That was when the real fighting began. Tal brought his findings to War Master Krell. "Sir, I think I understand why we can't find the human ships." "They're hiding?" "No, sir. They're hunting. Look at these engagement patterns from previous conflicts. Humans don't defend in the traditional sense. They allow approach, they gather intelligence, and then they strike from unexpected angles. It's how persistent predators function on death worlds." Krell studied the data. The pattern was consistent across dozens of engagements. Humans gave ground initially, appeared to retreat, then counterattacked with devastating precision once they understood their opponent's tactics. "How do we counter this?" Krell asked. "I don't know, sir. Every species that fought them tried different approaches. None of them worked." An alert sounded across the command center. The tactical officer called out, "War Master, we're picking up a transmission. It's on all frequencies. It's from the humans. Put it through." A voice filled the command center, speaking in perfect Vryn language. It was calm, almost gentle like a teacher addressing students. "Vryn Fleet, this is Admiral Patricia Cole of the Terran Defense Force. You are approaching human territory with hostile intent. Under the terms of the formal challenge, you have the right to continue. However, I am authorized to offer you one final opportunity to withdraw." Krell activated his communication system. "Human Admiral, this is War Master Krell. Your colonies are undefended. You have no ships in the sector. This offer is meaningless." A pause, then Cole's voice returned, and Krell could swear he heard amusement in it. "War Master, we have 47 ships currently tracking your fleet. We've been in position for 3 days, and I assure you our colonies are very well defended." The tactical officer started working frantically at his console. "Sir, I'm recalibrating sensors for low emission profiles. I'm getting..." Oh no. The display lit up with new contacts. 47 human ships materialized on the tactical plot, surrounding the Vryn fleet in a perfect three-dimensional formation. They had been there all along, invisible to standard scans. Krell felt his certainty crumble. "How?" Cole's voice continued. "You're in our space now, War Master. You're in our sensor range. You're in our engagement envelope. And most importantly, you're fighting on our terms. I'm giving you 30 minutes to withdraw. After that, we will consider you hostile combatants and respond accordingly." High Regent Saltheron's face appeared on an override channel. "War Master, you will not retreat. You will engage and destroy those pathetic 47 ships. We have superior numbers." "Regent, they've been tracking us for 3 days. They know our capabilities, our formations, our..." "I said engage." Krell closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with resignation. He had his orders. The Regent had left him no choice. "All ships, break formation. Engage the human fleet. Show them the might of the Vryn Empire." 300 warships turned toward the 47 human vessels. It should have been an overwhelming advantage. It should have been a simple matter of applying superior force. Admiral Cole watched the Vryn fleet maneuver and allowed herself a moment of regret. She had given them every chance to back down, every opportunity to leave with honor intact. They had chosen pride over wisdom. "All ships," she said quietly. "Execute Protocol Midnight. Show them why predators don't hunt in packs." The 47 human ships suddenly accelerated to speeds that should have liquefied their crews. They moved in perfect coordination, each vessel following attack patterns that seemed reckless to the point of suicidal. They weren't engaging in standard naval tactics. They were hunting. The first Vryn ship to open fire missed completely. The human vessel it had targeted was no longer where sensors said it should be. Instead, it had looped around in a gravity-assisted maneuver that brought it directly behind the Vryn warship. A single precise strike disabled the larger ship's engines. This pattern repeated across the engagement zone. Human ships moved like they were alive, like they were wild animals toying with prey. They used gravity wells, sensor dead zones, and three-dimensional thinking that confused Vryn targeting systems. Krell watched in growing horror as his formation collapsed. His ships were faster on paper, more heavily armed, and far more numerous. But the humans weren't fighting ship to ship. They were hunting systematically, targeting command systems, disabling engines, and crippling weapons without destroying the vessels themselves. "They're not trying to kill us," his tactical officer said in disbelief. "They're taking us apart piece by piece." A human ship designated Hunter 7 flew directly through Vryn crossfire that should have destroyed it 3 times over. The human pilot pulled maneuvers that would have crushed any non-human crew. It disabled 4 Vryn ships in 2 minutes, then vanished back into sensor shadow. "War Master, we're losing cohesion," a captain reported over the communication net. "They're everywhere at once. Our weapons can't track them." Krell tried to rally his forces, but it was like fighting smoke. Every time his ships focused on one human vessel, 3 more attacked from different angles. The humans weren't just faster or better armed. They thought differently. They fought like no other species he had ever encountered. Then the human communications channel opened again. This time it wasn't Admiral Cole's measured voice. It was younger, more energetic, with an edge of enthusiasm that was somehow more terrifying than anger would have been. "Vryn Fleet, this is Lieutenant Nina Okafor, Terran Special Operations. We're inbound to New Manitoba. Please note that any ship attempting to reach the planet will be considered hostile and will be disabled. Have a nice day." Krell pulled up the tactical display of New Manitoba orbit. Nothing showed on sensors. Then as he watched, 20 small craft appeared seemingly out of nowhere. They had dropped from high orbit using nothing but gravity and heat shielding. No engines, no signature, just controlled falling until the last possible moment. The drop pods hit the upper atmosphere and deployed. Special Forces soldiers in powered armor emerged, took control of key orbital positions, and established a defensive perimeter that would turn any landing attempt into a massacre. "They dropped from orbit individually," Tal said, his voice hollow. "Most species need landing ships. They just fell and deployed." The engagement around New Manitoba lasted 30 minutes. The human ships didn't destroy a single Vryn vessel completely, but they disabled 70% of Krell's fleet. Engines were targeted with surgical precision. Weapons systems were neutralized. Command centers were hit with electronic warfare that turned Vryn computers into useless metal. And through it all, human casualties remained at 0. Krell activated his communication system, overriding Saltheron's increasingly frantic orders. "Admiral Cole, I request terms of surrender." Silence for a moment, then Cole's voice returned. "War Master Krell, you honor your people with that decision. Here are my terms. Withdraw all functional ships immediately. Leave the disabled vessels. We will tow them to the nearest neutral station and return them with crews intact. You will report to the Galactic Assembly what happened here, and you will recommend that the Vryn Empire reconsider its expansion policies." "Agreed," Krell said without hesitation. "And War Master? One more thing." "Yes, Admiral?" "We tracked your sensor sweep of the colonies. We know you were being careful. We know you had doubts. That's why you and your crews are alive. Remember that." The working Vryn ships began their withdrawal. Krell sat in his command chair and realized he had just learned more about warfare in 30 minutes than in 30 years of victory against lesser opponents. High Regent Saltheron was screaming over the communication channel, demanding explanations, threatening courts-martial. Krell muted the transmission and looked at Ensign Tal. "You were right," he said quietly. "They weren't hiding their strength. They were showing mercy, until we forced them to stop." Tal nodded, his expression grim. "What do we do now, sir?" "We go home. We report the truth, and we hope the Regent has enough wisdom left to listen." As the Vryn fleet limped away, Admiral Cole watched them go and allowed herself a tired smile. 7 days. The challenge had been issued 7 days ago. It had ended in 3 hours of actual combat. "Message to Earth Command," she said. "Objectives achieved. 0 casualties. Minimum force applied. Recommend immediate diplomatic follow-up to establish new protocols with Vryn Empire." Commander Liu approached. "Admiral, we could have ended this in minutes if we'd gone full strength." "I know. But that wasn't the mission. The mission was to teach, not destroy. They'll remember this. And more importantly, everyone else watching will remember it too." On New Manitoba, Ben Park watched the tactical display showing the Vryn retreat and shook his head in amusement. His daughter sat next to him, looking disappointed. "That's it?" she asked. "They didn't even reach the planet?" "Be grateful, sweetie. War is not entertainment. But you said we'd protect each other if they got through. And we would have. But the nice thing about having a good military is that we rarely have to fight ourselves." The 7-day countdown was over. The challenge had been answered. And the galaxy had been reminded of a fundamental truth. The most dangerous predator is the one that chooses not to hunt. The disabled Vryn ships floated in space like monuments to miscalculation. Human recovery teams moved between them with efficient precision, providing medical aid, stabilizing life support, and ensuring the alien crews remained comfortable while awaiting transport to neutral territory. It was a strange sight. The victors caring for the defeated with the same dedication they might show their own wounded. War Master Krell supervised the evacuation from the Pride of Drax, which was one of the few ships that remained partially operational. Human technicians worked alongside Vryn engineers to restore basic systems. The humans were professional, courteous, and disturbingly cheerful given they had just won a battle. A human medical team arrived on Krell's bridge to check for injuries. The lead medic, a young woman with dark skin and calm eyes, scanned the Vryn crew with equipment that looked far more advanced than intelligence reports had suggested. "You're all in good shape," she said in flawless Vryn language. "Some stress indicators, but that's normal after combat. We have nutrition packs compatible with your biology if anyone's hungry." Krell stared at her. "You're offering us food? You've been in combat for 3 hours and evacuation procedures for 2 more. Your people need to eat. We brought supplies." She gestured to her team, who began distributing sealed packages. Ensign Tal accepted one hesitantly and examined it. The package had instructions in Vryn, dietary information, and even a note that said, "Hope you feel better soon," with a small drawing of what humans called a smiley face. "I don't understand," Tal said quietly. "We attacked you. We threatened your colonies. Why are you helping us?" The medic smiled, and Tal realized this was not a threat display despite the exposed teeth. "Because the fighting's over. You surrendered. That makes you wounded soldiers who need care, not enemies. That's how we do things." She moved on to check other crew members, leaving Tal holding the nutrition pack and trying to reconcile the efficiency of human combat with the gentleness of human compassion. The same species that had dismantled his fleet in hours was now making sure everyone had enough to eat. Admiral Cole's flagship, the Endurance, moved into position near the disabled vessels. She was conducting a secure communication with Earth Command, providing her after-action report. "Combat phase lasted 2 hours and 43 minutes, she reported. "We disabled 210 Vryn ships with no enemy casualties. 36 Vryn vessels withdrew under their War Master's orders. 54 were already outside engagement range and did not participate." General Hayes listened from his office on Earth. "Casualties on our side? 12 minor injuries from high-G maneuvers. 1 pilot has a broken arm from a hard turn. Everyone's cleared for duty except him, and he's complaining about being left out of cleanup operations." Hayes chuckled. "Sounds about right. Political fallout? Minimal so far. The galactic community seems more relieved than anything else. Ambassador Quillen sent a message saying we showed admirable restraint. The Confederation is already requesting talks about updating our mutual defense treaties." "And the Vryn?" Cole glanced at her tactical display showing the disabled ships. "War Master Krell is a professional. He understands what happened and why. The problem is their High Regent. Saltheron is still sending threatening messages from their homeworld. Let him talk. His own military knows the truth now. That's what matters." The communication ended. Cole turned to Commander Liu, who was coordinating the recovery operations. "Status on the Vryn crews?" "All accounted for. Medical teams report no serious injuries. We're providing food, water, and temporary life support while we arrange transport to neutral stations. Several Vryn officers have asked to speak with you personally." "Arrange it. I'll meet with their senior staff." An hour later, Cole sat in a conference room with War Master Krell and 5 of his senior captains. The Vryn looked tired, defeated, but also strangely curious. It was Krell who spoke first. "Admiral Cole, I need to understand something. You had us completely surrounded. Your weapons were far more accurate than we expected. You could have destroyed my entire fleet. Why didn't you?" Cole considered her answer carefully. War Master, can I ask you a question first? In your military career, how many wars have you fought? 23 campaigns across 2 centuries. And in those campaigns, what happened to forces that surrendered? Krell's expression darkened. Some were shown mercy, most were not. Surrender is often considered weakness. That's the difference between us, Cole said. Humans don't see surrender as weakness. We see it as wisdom. You assess the situation, realize continued fighting would only cause casualties without changing the outcome, and made the hard choice to protect your people. That deserves respect, not punishment. One of the Vryn captains leaned forward. But we attacked you. We threatened your civilians. We called you weak. You did, Cole agreed. And we responded with the minimum force necessary to stop you and teach a lesson. But once you surrendered, you stopped being enemies. You became soldiers who made a good decision under bad circumstances. Krell sat back, processing this. Your species fights wars differently than anyone else in the galaxy. We fight wars the way we survive on our homeworld, efficiently, decisively, but also with an understanding that today's enemy might be tomorrow's ally. Destroying you completely would have been easy. Building something better after the fighting stops? That's harder. That's what we prefer to do. Why? Another captain asked. You have the power to dominate galactic politics. You could have conquered the known systems centuries ago. Why choose cooperation instead? Cole pulled up a holographic image of Earth. That's home, a world where everything evolved to kill everything else. Humans survived by being better predators, yes, but also by being smarter. We learned that cooperation gets better results than conquest. We learned that today's rival can become tomorrow's friend. And we learned that being the most dangerous doesn't mean you have to be the most feared. She changed the image to show human colonies across space. We could rule through fear. We could demand submission. But then we'd spend all our time fighting rebellions and enforcing control. Instead, we make friends. We trade, we help where we can. And when someone threatens that, we respond with exactly enough force to make our point clear. But your restraint makes you vulnerable, Krell argued. If others see you hesitate to use full force, we don't hesitate, Cole interrupted gently. We calibrate. Today we disabled your fleet and let you withdraw with honor. If you had attacked our civilians directly, if you had refused surrender, if you had escalated beyond the challenge parameters, the response would have been very different. Ask the Kelvin Dominion about what happens when humans stop showing restraint. The Kelvin were annihilated, one of the captains said quietly. Because they enslaved human children, Cole said, her voice hardening. They crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. You issued a military challenge according to galactic law. You fought honorably despite being outmatched, and you surrendered when continuing meant meaningless casualties. That's why your ships are being repaired, your crews are being fed, and you'll all go home alive. The room fell silent. Finally, Krell spoke again. What happens now? Now you go home. You report to your government. And you tell them the truth about what happened here. Not propaganda, not face-saving lies. The truth, because every major power in the galaxy will have access to our battle recordings. Hiding what happened won't help anyone. The Regent will not accept this easily. The Regent doesn't have to accept it, but your military, your government, and your people need to understand reality. We don't want to be your enemies. We'd much rather be your trading partners, your allies, your friends. But if forced to fight, we will win. And we will do so in a way that leaves room for better relationships afterward. Cole stood, signaling the meeting's end. War Master, you're a good officer who was given bad orders. I respect the way you conducted yourself today. My hope is that your people learn from this without having to repeat it. Krell stood as well, offering the Vryn salute of respect. Admiral, I misjudged your species badly. I believe the humans were weak because you avoid confrontation. I understand now that you avoid confrontation because you know exactly how strong you are. That's a lesson worth taking home, Cole agreed. After the Vryn officers left, Commander Liu approached with a concerned expression. Admiral, we're picking up increased military activity from the Vryn homeworld. Looks like the Regent is mobilizing additional forces. Cole pulled up the tactical display. Sure enough, Vryn ships were gathering near their capital system, not the massive fleet they had just disabled, but enough to suggest Saltheron wasn't done yet. How many ships? Approximately 100. Mostly lighter vessels and patrol craft. Their heavy fleet is still here being repaired. Cole made a decision. Open a channel to General Hayes, Priority 1. When Hayes appeared on screen, Cole briefed him quickly. "Sir, the Regent appears to be escalating instead of backing down. He's gathering what's left of his available military." Hayes nodded grimly. "Then we move to Phase 2. Patricia, take your fleet to the Vryn homeworld. Don't attack. Don't threaten. Just sit in orbit and wait. Let them see what we could do if we wanted to." "Understood. What about their mobilization?" "They can mobilize all they want. But when they see 47 human ships in orbit around their capital, ships that just disabled their best fleet, they'll understand the situation clearly." The Endurance and the rest of the human fleet departed the disputed colonies, leaving behind repair teams and medical personnel to continue helping the defeated Vryn crews. The journey to the Vryn homeworld took 2 days at standard faster-than-light speeds. When they arrived, Admiral Cole positioned her ships in high orbit, visible to every sensor on the planet below. She opened a general communication channel. "This is Admiral Patricia Cole of the Terran Defense Force. We come in peace. We are not here to attack. We are here to talk. We request a meeting with your government to discuss terms for a lasting peace agreement. We will wait in orbit for your response." On the planet below, chaos erupted. The same ships that had dismantled their fleet now hung in orbit around their homeworld. The human admiral spoke of peace, but the implied threat was clear. If we wanted to attack, you couldn't stop us. High, Regent Saltheron raged in his council chambers, demanding that his remaining forces attack the humans immediately, but his military commanders, led by newly returned War Master Krell, refused. "Regent," Krell said firmly, "I have fought the humans. I have lost to the humans, and I have been shown mercy by the humans. If we attack them now, they will not show that mercy again. They are giving us a chance to end this honorably. I recommend we take it." "Honorably?" Saltheron spat. "They humiliated us. They sit in orbit like conquerors." "They sit in orbit like victors offering peace," Krell corrected. "There is a difference, a crucial one." The council debated for 6 hours. In the end, the reality of the situation was undeniable. The humans had won decisively. They had done so while showing remarkable restraint, and now they offered terms instead of demands. The Vryn government sent a delegation to meet with Admiral Cole aboard the Endurance. They arrived expecting arrogance, expecting conquerors. What they found was a calm military officer who treated them with respect. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Cole said. "I know this isn't easy for your people, but I believe we can find a path forward that benefits everyone." The lead Vryn negotiator, a senior diplomat named Shara, studied the human admiral carefully. "You destroyed our fleet and now orbit our homeworld, yet you speak of mutual benefit?" "Your fleet is being repaired, not destroyed," Cole corrected gently. "And we orbit your world to demonstrate capability, not intent. There's a difference. We want you to understand what we can do so you also understand what we choose not to do." Shara considered this. "What are your terms?" "Simple. The 3 disputed colonies remain human territory. Your empire agrees to respect those borders. In exchange, we'll help rebuild your damaged ships, establish trade agreements, and work toward a formal peace treaty. We'll even share some defensive technology to help protect your borders from actual threats." "Why would you help us after we attacked you?" Cole smiled. "Because making an enemy costs us nothing and gains us nothing. Making a friend costs us some resources but gains us a trading partner, an ally, and one less potential conflict in the galaxy. We've run the numbers. Friendship is more profitable." "That's very practical," Shara said dryly. "Humans are very practical. We evolved on a world that punished waste and rewarded efficiency. Fighting expensive wars when we could be trading? That's wasteful. We prefer better options when they're available." The negotiations continued through the night. By morning, the framework for a peace agreement had been established. The Vryn would respect human territorial claims. Humans would provide technical assistance and trade opportunities. Both sides would exchange ambassadors and work toward long-term cooperation. When the delegation left, Shara paused at the airlock. "Admiral Cole, one more question. If we had not surrendered, if we had continued fighting, what would have happened?" Cole's expression became serious. We would have disabled your ships without killing your crews exactly as we did. But the diplomatic aftermath would have been very different. Surrender after a fair fight earns respect. Continued fighting after clear defeat earns only cleanup operations. You made the smart choice. As the Vryn delegation departed, Commander Liu joined Cole at the observation window. Think it will stick? The peace agreement? It'll stick, Cole said confidently. They've seen what we can do. More importantly, they've seen what we choose not to do. That's the lesson that matters. The galaxy doesn't need to fear humans, they just need to remember that we're very, very good at what we do, and what we choose to do is build instead of destroy. Unless someone gives us no choice, Liu added. Unless someone gives us no choice, Cole agreed. The human fleet remained in orbit for 3 more days, a visible reminder of the new reality. Then, as agreed, they withdrew to the disputed colonies and resumed normal operations. The crisis was over. The challenge had been answered. And the galaxy had learned another chapter in the ongoing lesson of why humans were the species everyone wanted as friends and nobody wanted as enemies. War Master Krell watched the human ships depart from his office on Draxtar. Ensign Tal stood beside him, silent and thoughtful. What did we learn, Ensign? Krell asked. That strength without wisdom is just violence, Tal replied, and that the humans have both. Krell nodded. Remember this. Teach it to the next generation. The humans are not weak. They are restrained. There is a universe of difference between the two. Far away on New Manitoba, life continued as normal. Children attended school, farmers harvested crops, tiger wolves played with their human companions, and nobody discussed the brief crisis that had almost disrupted their peaceful existence. Ben Park's daughter asked him one last question about the conflict. Dad, if the humans are so strong, why don't they just take over everything? Ben considered his answer carefully. Because, honey, being able to do something and choosing to do it are different things. Humans could conquer, but we've learned that cooperation builds better worlds than conquest ever could. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. She thought about this, then nodded and returned to her homework. In the background, one of their tiger wolves yawned and stretched, completely unconcerned with galactic politics. The challenge was over. The lesson was taught. And the galaxy continued turning, perhaps a little wiser than before. 3 months. After the Vryn challenge, the Galactic Assembly reconvened for what many species were calling the most important session in a century. The hall was more crowded than usual, with representatives from species that had not attended in decades making special appearances. Everyone wanted to hear the official account of what happened when someone challenged humanity and lost. Ambassador Quillen sat in his usual position, but today he was not the calm, measured diplomat most knew. He was tired. The past months had been filled with endless meetings, consultations, and explanations. Everyone wanted to know about the humans. Everyone wanted to understand what they had witnessed. The session opened with High Regent Saltheron's replacement, a younger Vryn named Shara who had led the peace negotiations. She stood at the speaker's platform with a dignity that came from accepting hard truths. Members of the Assembly, Shara began, I come before you today to report on the resolution of the territorial dispute between the Vryn Empire and the human collective. I also come to formally apologize for my predecessor's actions and to share what my people have learned. A murmur ran through the Assembly. Formal apologies were rare in galactic politics. 3 months ago, former High Regent Saltheron issued a military challenge to humanity over 3 colony worlds. He believed humans were weak. He believed their peaceful nature indicated inability to defend themselves. He was catastrophically wrong. Shara pulled up a holographic display showing the battle statistics. The humans deployed 47 ships against our fleet of 300. The engagement lasted less than 3 hours. They disabled 210 of our vessels with 0 casualties on either side. Not minimal casualties. 0. They could have killed every Vryn in that fleet. They chose not to. The silence in the assembly was profound. After accepting our surrender, The humans provided medical care, food, and technical assistance. They repaired our damaged ships. They treated our wounded. And then they came to our homeworld, not to conquer, but to negotiate a lasting peace. Today, the Vryn Empire has a trade agreement with humanity. We have exchanged ambassadors, and we have learned a lesson that I hope others will take to heart. She paused, looking around the chamber. Never mistake restraint for weakness. Never assume that peaceful people cannot defend themselves. And never challenge humanity unless you are prepared to learn these lessons the hard way. Shara stepped down. The next speaker was Commander Allison Webb, representing Earth. She walked to the platform with the same calm she had shown during the initial challenge. Members of the Assembly, I will not bore you with the tactical details of what happened. Those are public record. Instead, I want to address a question that many of you have asked. Why does humanity limit its military presence in galactic affairs? Why do we choose cooperation over dominance? She pulled up an image of Earth. This is where we come from. A Class 12 death world where survival required constant adaptation, innovation, and cooperation. We evolved as persistence predators, yes. But we also evolved as social animals who understood that working together achieved better results than fighting alone. The image shifted to show human history. We spent thousands of years fighting each other. Wars over resources, territory, ideology. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. And through all that conflict, we learned something crucial. Winning a war is easy compared to winning a peace. She let that sink in before continuing. When we reached space, we had a choice. We could apply the lessons we learned the hard way, or we could repeat our mistakes on a galactic scale. We chose to learn. We chose to build relationships instead of empires. We chose to trade instead of raid. Another image showed human military capabilities. Make no mistake, we maintained the ability to defend ourselves. We kept our military strong, our technology advanced, and our people trained. But we used these capabilities as a last resort, not a first option. Allison looked directly at the assembled representatives. The Vryn challenged us. They forced us to demonstrate what we're capable of. We responded with the minimum force necessary to make our point clear. We could have done far worse. We chose not to. That choice, that restraint, is not weakness. It's the product of hard-won wisdom. She changed the display to show economic data. Since achieving faster-than-light travel, humanity has established trade agreements with 63 species. We've provided humanitarian aid to 42 civilizations. We've mediated 17 conflicts without firing a shot. This is what we prefer to do. This is what we're good at. But when forced to fight, she continued, her voice hardening slightly, we fight to win. We fight with precision, efficiency, and overwhelming capability. And then, when the fighting stops, we immediately begin working toward a better peace. Because that's what survivors do. They don't just overcome challenges. They learn from them and build something stronger. Allison stepped down to respectful silence. The next speaker was Ambassador Quillen himself, called upon to provide historical context as one of the few beings who had witnessed humanity's entire time in galactic politics. The elderly insectoid moved slowly to the platform, his antennae indicating deep thought. I have served in this assembly for 400 cycles, he began. I was here when humans first achieved faster-than-light travel. I was here for the Kelvin War. I was here for the Treaty of Broken Swords. And I was here when the Vryn made their challenge. He paused, gathering his thoughts. In all that time, I have learned one consistent truth about humanity. They are exactly as dangerous as they need to be and no more. This is a species that chooses its battles carefully, fights them efficiently, and then works to ensure those battles never need to be fought again. Quillen pulled up comparative data. Look at these numbers. In 3 centuries, humans have been involved in military conflict 7 times. Compare that to any other major power. The Confederation has fought 12 wars. The Dominion has fought 9. The Hive Collective has fought 6. Humanity has fought 7, but 6 of those were defensive actions where they were attacked first. The 7th, he continued, was a police action against pirates who were enslaving children from multiple species. The humans hunted down every pirate base in that sector and ended the slave trade permanently. They then established a protection network that continues to operate today, safeguarding commercial routes for all species. He looked around the chamber. This is who humans are. They avoid conflict when possible. They respond decisively when necessary. And they build better systems in the aftermath. Some of you fear them because of their military capability. I suggest you should respect them for their restraint instead. Another speaker rose, a representative from a small species called the Tilari. Ambassador Quillen, with respect, how can we trust that humans will continue showing restraint? Today they choose peace. Tomorrow they might choose conquest. Quillen's antennae twitched, and what humans had learned was amusement. Young representative, let me share something about human psychology. They evolved on a world so hostile that cooperation was necessary for survival. This created deep social bonds and a cultural emphasis on mutual benefit. Humans don't conquer because conquest is inefficient. They would have to govern unwilling populations, fight constant rebellions, and waste resources on control instead of progress. He pulled up economic projections. Humans have calculated that peaceful trade generates more wealth with fewer costs than military expansion. They prefer profit to power. This is not naivete. This is practical mathematics applied to galactic politics. The session continued for hours. Species after species stood to share their perspectives on humanity. Some expressed concern. Most expressed relief that humans remained committed to peaceful coexistence. Several announced new trade initiatives with human colonies. Finally, a new species representative was recognized. The Ilari had just achieved faster-than-light travel and were attending their first assembly. Their ambassador, a young female named Kess, approached the platform nervously. "Honored members," she said hesitantly, "my people are new to this community. We have watched the presentations today with great interest. But I must ask, if humans are so powerful, why do they sit in the back of this chamber? Why do they speak so quietly? Why do they not demand more?" A veteran diplomat from the Confederation leaned over to Kess and whispered something. The young ambassador's expression changed from curiosity to something approaching fear. She looked back at where Allison Webb sat calmly in the human delegation section. Quillen, still at the platform, answered the question for everyone's benefit. "Ambassador Kess, humans sit in the back because they don't need to sit in the front. They speak quietly because they don't need to shout. They don't demand more because they already have everything they need. Respect, friendship, and the knowledge that nobody wants to repeat what happened to the Vryn." He gestured toward Allison. "Look at her. Does she seem threatening? Does she appear aggressive? No, she appears calm, reasonable, and peaceful. That is because she is all those things. But never forget what she represents. She represents a species that can dismantle a fleet in 3 hours, orbit your homeworld the next day, and offer you a trade agreement by the end of the week." Kess sat down slowly, processing this information. Around the chamber, other representatives nodded in understanding. This was the lesson the galaxy had learned 3 months ago, and was being reminded of today. The session concluded with a formal resolution. The Assembly officially recognized human territorial claims to the disputed colonies. They updated the galactic database to reflect Earth's actual military capabilities, and they established a new protocol. Any species considering military action against humanity was required to consult historical records first. As the Assembly dispersed, War Master Krell approached Allison Webb. He had been present as part of the Vryn delegation, providing military testimony about the engagement. "Ambassador Webb," he said respectfully, "I wanted to thank you personally." "For what, War Master?" "For showing mercy when you had no obligation to do so, for treating defeated warriors with dignity, and for helping my people understand reality without destroying us in the process." Allison smiled. "War Master, you made it easy. You surrendered when continuing meant pointless casualties. You accepted reality instead of denying it, and you helped your government move forward instead of backward. That deserves recognition." "Still," Krell insisted, "many species would have used our defeat as justification for conquest. Humans used it as an opportunity for friendship." "That is unusual." "That's human," Allison corrected gently. "We learned long ago that today's enemy can become tomorrow's ally. We prefer to leave that door open." Krell offered the Vryn salute of respect. "If my people have another conflict in the future, I hope it is alongside humans, not against them." "That's the idea," Allison agreed. Across the station, in a quiet observation lounge, several younger diplomats had gathered to discuss the day's events. Among them was Ensign Tal, who had transferred from military service to diplomatic duties after witnessing the human engagement. "I still can't believe it," a Talari diplomat said. 47 ships against 300. It should have been suicide. It would have been suicide for anyone else, Tal replied. But humans fight differently. They don't just use superior technology or numbers. They use psychology, timing, and three-dimensional thinking that most species can't match. But they're so peaceful, another young diplomat protested. They sponsor cultural exchanges. They fund medical research. They help colonies with infrastructure. How does that reconcile with their military capability? Tal considered his answer carefully. Imagine a predator so efficient at hunting that it doesn't need to hunt constantly. It can afford to be generous, to be helpful, to be kind, because when it does need to hunt, it never fails. That's humanity. They're peaceful because they can afford to be. They help others because they enjoy it. But they never forget how to be dangerous, and they never hesitate to apply that danger when necessary. A veteran Confederation diplomat who had been listening spoke up. Let me tell you youngsters something. I've been in galactic politics for 80 years. I've seen species rise and fall. I've watched empires conquer and collapse. And I've learned one absolute truth. Make friends with humanity. Trade with them. Work with them. Include them in your plans, because having humans as allies makes every problem easier and every enemy reconsider their choices. Is it really that simple? The Talari diplomat asked. It really is, the veteran confirmed. Look at the major conflicts of the past century. How many involved human allies on the winning side? All of them. How many species have successfully conquered human-defended territory? None. How many civilizations have prospered after establishing close ties with humanity? Dozens! He stood to leave, offering one final piece of wisdom. The humans are apex predators who chose to be gardeners instead. They prefer growing things to destroying them. But they never forgot how to hunt, and they never will. Be grateful they point that capability at problems instead of people. On Earth, General Hayes sat in his office reviewing the final reports from the Vryn engagement. Admiral Cole had provided exemplary leadership. Lieutenant Okafor and her Special Forces team had performed flawlessly. Casualties had been minimal. The political outcome had exceeded expectations. His communication console chimed. The Secretary General appeared on screen. General, congratulations on a successful operation. The assembly session went well. Ambassador Webb reports that our reputation has been clarified. Hayes smiled slightly. That was the goal, ma'am. Let everyone remember what we can do, so they also remember what we choose not to do. Do you think it will last? The peace with the Vryn? I do. Their military understands what happened. Their government has accepted reality, and their people are already benefiting from trade agreements. They have every incentive to maintain good relations and no incentive to try again. What about other potential challengers? After today, I doubt anyone will challenge us directly for at least a generation. The Vryn were aggressive, experienced, and confident. We handled them efficiently and mercifully. That sends exactly the message we want. We're dangerous when necessary, but we prefer other solutions. The Secretary General nodded. Keep the fleet ready, General. Just because we prefer peace doesn't mean we can afford to be unprepared. Always, ma'am. On New Manitoba, life continued in its peaceful routine. Ben Park's daughter had stopped asking about the Vryn and moved on to more immediate concerns, like training her tiger wolves for the upcoming colony exhibition. The brief crisis had been just that, brief. Life moved on. Ben stood on his porch watching the sunset and reflecting on the past months. His colony had been threatened. His government had responded. The threat had been eliminated without any colonists ever being in real danger. That was how it should work. His daughter came out to join him, her tiger wolves trailing behind. Dad, my teacher said the Vryn learned their lesson. Do you think they really did? I think they learned that humans are good friends and bad enemies. That's an important lesson. Are we really that dangerous? Ben looked at his daughter, who could outrun most galactic athletes, had been trained in emergency survival since age 5, and considered a pack of predators to be her best friends. Sweetie, we're persistence predators from a death world who domesticated wolves, conquered our planet, and then decided to be nice to everyone we met in space. We're exactly that dangerous. We just choose not to show it most of the time." "That seems like a good choice," she said thoughtfully. "It is. Being strong is useful. Being kind is better. Being both is how you build something that lasts." Far out in space, on the edge of known territory, a small exploration ship detected the signal from a newly spacefaring civilization. They were taking their first cautious steps into a galaxy that seemed vast and intimidating. The exploration ship relayed the information back to Earth, along with a recommendation for first contact protocols. Within days, a human diplomatic team would arrive to welcome the new species, to offer friendship and trade, to help them navigate galactic politics. The humans would be patient, kind, and helpful. They would share technology and knowledge freely. They would be the best neighbors any young civilization could hope for. And somewhere in the historical databases, accessible to anyone who cared, to look, the records of the Vryn challenge would remain. A reminder, a lesson, a promise kept in permanent form. Humanity prefers peace, but never mistake that preference for inability to do otherwise. In the Galactic Assembly Hall, as the last representatives departed, Ambassador Quillen remained behind. He looked at the empty chamber and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. 3 months ago he had feared the worst, a new war, devastating casualties, galactic instability. Instead, humanity had done exactly what they always did. They responded, with precise force, achieved their objectives cleanly, and immediately began building toward better outcomes. They had reminded everyone why cooperation with humanity was preferable to conflict, and they had done so without unnecessary cruelty or destruction. His antennae twitched in the equivalent of a smile. He had spent 4 centuries watching civilizations rise and fall, watching wars erupt and end, watching the galaxy slowly mature toward better systems. Humanity was part of that maturation process. Not perfect, certainly, but consistent, reliable, and genuinely interested in mutual benefit over domination. The galaxy was safer with humans in it. That was the fundamental truth. They were the predator species that made everyone else safer by existing. They were the warriors who preferred peace but never forgot how to fight. They were the proof that strength and kindness could coexist. Quillen left the chamber and headed for his quarters. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new conflicts, new opportunities for growth. But tonight he could rest, knowing that the galaxy had learned its lesson once again. You could challenge humanity if you chose, but you shouldn't, because the most dangerous species in the galaxy was also the most patient, the most merciful, and the most committed to building something better than simple dominance. Challenge them, and you would learn. Submit, and you would be helped. Attack, and you would be stopped. Surrender, and you would be offered friendship. That was humanity. That was the species the galaxy shared space with, and that was exactly the neighbor everyone needed, even if they didn't always appreciate it until they made the mistake of challenging them. The 7-day countdown was long over. The challenge had been answered, the lesson had been taught, and the galaxy turned on, perhaps a little wiser, certainly more aware, and definitely more respectful of the species that sat quietly in the back of the assembly chamber and spoke softly about peace while maintaining the capability to fight wars that would terrify anyone foolish enough to force them into it. Never challenge the galaxy's most dangerous species, or do if you want to learn firsthand why everyone else made peace with them instead. Either way, the lesson would be taught. That was guaranteed. How painful that lesson became was entirely up to the challenger. The Vryn had chosen the less painful path by surrendering quickly. Their empire survived, their people prospered, and they joined the growing list of civilizations who understood the fundamental truth about humanity. Never mistake their kindness for weakness. Never assume their patience is unlimited. Never challenge them without being absolutely certain you understand what you're actually starting. Because you're not just challenging a species, you're challenging millions of years of evolution on a planet that tried constantly to kill them. You're challenging survivors who became apex predators who then chose to be gardeners instead of conquerors. And if you force those gardeners to remember their predator roots, well, you just challenged the galaxy's most dangerous species. Good luck with that.